of the violins of autumn wound my heart with a monotonous
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Today at 1, we're live in Ukraine as Russia invades in a major military assault by land, sea and air.
It's now more than a month since the US Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, visited Taiwan. China's ambassador to Australia also issued a blunt warning a few days ago that those who push for Taiwanese independence will be punished.
We're waiting for a peaceful reunification, but we cannot rule out other options.
You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed, it'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore.
Welcome to Dictators v Democrats, Why We Fight, the show where we speak with those on the front lines of defending democracy. New episodes drop every Friday. Before we start, I do have one thing to ask you, my wonderful listeners. If you value this work, then please find one person, a colleague, a family member, a friend, who you think might be interested in the stories that we're telling here, and share it with them, and explain why you find it valuable. This way, we can help this platform grow and get these vital stories out to more people. Thank you very much. Also, check out my work on the Dictators v Democrats Substack and YouTube channels, where I cover every front of the global fight for democracy. Now, let's find out why they fight. Welcome to this episode of Why We Fight. I'm very pleased to be joined here with Mr. Oleg Magaletsky, a Ukrainian investor, strategist, and one of the organizers of the Free Nations of Post-Russia Forum. Mr. Magaletsky has been deeply involved in supporting Ukraine's defense and supporting democracy in Ukraine, and making the case internationally that the war is not just about Ukraine's survival, but the future of democracy itself. Mr. Magaletsky, thank you very much for coming on board.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to speak this evening with you.
And for those who don't know, let's get a little bit into your background. Who are you? What is it you do? I touched on the Free Nations of Post-Russia Forum.
Yep. So I'm the citizen of Ukraine. I'm Ukrainian and I am a European. I feel this both identity which have some synergy, and of course some people who share their liberals' values, the values of open society, and I wanted to live in free, prosperous and comfortable country, and it's impossible if your neighbors trying to kill you. So to have this opportunity to develop my business, to have some family vacation and live normal life, it means that we should stop Moscow. Because if you don't stop Moscow, they will come back like they do it a lot of time in history, and not only to Ukraine and for other countries which are our allies in Northern Europe, in Central Europe, and will try to destroy it. And only the one way how we could stop Moscow, because the war which was started in Moscow could be finished only in Moscow. It's decolonization of Moscovia, because it's the real name of this pseudo-Russian fake federation, because it's last colonial empire in Europe. 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago in Europe, we have a lot of colonial empire, which have colonies mostly not in Europe continent, but in Asia, Africa, in both America, in Pacific region. But in common days, fortunately, we don't have Ottoman Empire or Spanish Empire or British Empire, something like that. But we still have the Russian colonial empire, and they use people from these colonies like a meat in their war now against Ukraine, before it against Sakartvelo or Syria or Ichkeria or Hungary, Czech Republic, Afghanistan, and so on, and use these resources which colonies have, like oil, gas, diamond, uranium, to finance their military aggression and repression inside this empire. So if you want to really have the long-term peace and stability, both not only in Ukraine, but in general in Europe, in Arctic, in Euro-Atlantic and Pacific region, we should support captive nation on their struggle to self-determination and independence, and make Moscow small again. So if Moscow won't have their colonies, it means that if they even won't be the democratic country, but I hope and I think that it's also possible. We have the great example when former metropolia become a normal country without colonies, and people are in Lisbon, in Istanbul, in Vienna could be the reference how it could be for Moscow. Also in Amsterdam, for example, yes. So for a long time, Dutch people or Portuguese people who used their colonies like Indonesia or Angola or Mozambique to not be democratic, but then they become democratic. So it's a strategy, and me, like a person who live in this hard time, try to push it, try to support this idea, try to act. Because unfortunately, time is very urgent. We can't just sit in and waiting when it will be, because of course it will be. All empires are collapsing, and it also will be with Moscow Empire, but there is two main options and two main issues. First, it's time. So we try to speed up this process, because every day still Moscow exists like colonial empire. They kill hundreds of people. So we should stop this, and we should understand that we should kill and destroy archer, not only arrows. Yes, so it's very important to understand where is the source of the problem. And the second point is that decolonization of Moscovia is not their target, it's a tool, because our target is long-term peace and stability. So when we speak about decolonization, on the second hand, we should also speak about their reconstruction of post-Russia spaces to create liberal, open societies and successful country, democracies, which will be a part of our both European or Pacific open community, and not become a new circle of revanchism and imperial ambitions. Yes, so it's very important to think about the next step. What we are doing, at what I'm like a person who have some experience in strategic development and management, try to make impact on this process, both on the way of supporting movements of captive nation, and try to make bridges between them and policymakers and stakeholders in NATO, European Union country, with diplomats, politics, experts, because it's very important to collaborate.
So, to further this goal, you were involved in the creation of the Free Nations of Post-Russia Forum. And what exactly does the forum involve, and who does it involve?
Yeah, so two main parties. First one is representative of still enslaved, captured nation by Moscow. For example, Bashkirs, Tatars, Sakha, Buryats, Komi, Ingush, and so on. It's more than 30, 40 different nations. And also the different region, because not only captive nation are enslaved by Moscow, but also ethnical Russian-speaking people who live in different regions. They are the same colonies for Moscow. For example, Siberia is the same colony for Moscow like Bashkortostan. It doesn't change that people speak Russian. Moscow used Siberia also like colony. For example, when it was in 18th century Great Britain, and we have their colonies in the North America, it was separated by Atlantic Ocean. And now Moscow and the colonies in Siberia are separated by Ural Mountains, but it's the same. Yes, so it's that doesn't mean land or sea change nothing. So we also have connection with movements of this colonial region where ethnical Russian people live, but they want to have their separate states, independent, like Ingria, Siberia, Pacific Coast. It's far east, where Khabarovsk, Vladivostok region, Urals, also Kuban, Don, and other. And the second part of our community, it's people who represent a nation who were under Moscow colonial rule for centuries, but now have their own independent states like Poland, Finland, Ukraine, Lithuania, Estonia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and so on, and other people of sharing our common values of open societies from Japan, Taiwan, Canada, United Kingdom, United States, France, Germany, Austria, Norway, and so on. So it's diplomats, experts, military, and political leaders who understand this issue and try to support captive nations. So we are working on mostly in level of culture, diplomatic, informational work, in some educational moments, and also political issues. So step by step, we try to destroy these Moscow propagandist narratives about one united Moscovia from occupied Königsberg, Królewia Korolia, which never was a part of this Romanov Empire of USSR before the end of the Second World War, when it was annexed by USSR for 50 years, by the way, and it should be over in 1995 because its decision was in Potsdam Conference just for 50 years. And till the occupied Japanese Karafuto Island, which Moscovites called Sakhalin, so they try to sell this idea that all people there are the same and they want to be a part of this empire with this terroristic mindset and Ruski Mir idea, so on, so on. So we try to show that it's not true. And 100 years ago, Finnish people, Poland people, Ukrainian or Lithuanian don't have their state. It doesn't mean that they don't have a nation. So the same situation now with Tatars, Bashkorts, Sahab, Buryats, Komi, and so on. So we are working together to promote this idea and try to act. I think it's very important that we should not waiting for second Pearl Harbor, because Moscow are preparing for big war not only in Ukraine. They're preparing to attack NATO country, and if we don't stop them, they will do it. And we should also understand that it's not only Moscow. They already create the axis of dictatorship of different totalitarian, authoritarian states like People's Republic of China, Iran, North Korea, and some satellites and proxy like Lukashenko regime or Maduro regime or Hamas, so on, who are working together. And it's not about territory. It's about the future, because main their target for Russia is not Ukraine or for People's Republic of China, Taiwan. Of course, they want to occupy more lands and so on, but the main target for them is to break up their rule-based order. So they wanted to create the 21st centuries when you have 2-3 big powers, so crazy dictators who could influence and decide the whole world how it should be. And our point is to stop this axis. I call them cringe axis of the first letter of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, greatest evil. So it's really cringe axis, and we should destroy them, and the free world should win.
And before encountering the Free Nations of Post-Russia Forum, I mean, Ahmed Zakayev gave me a copy of your book. And I, like many, especially in the West, even people who are interested in international affairs, even people interested in history, fell into the Russian propaganda trap of considering Russia as basically a monolith. I had an idea that the wealth was pooled in Moscow and Petersburg, but I didn't know much about any of the regions. So how different are the cultures in these disparate regions? And what do you think is driving these movements for independence? How large are they?
Yeah, I'm totally agree with you. Unfortunately, this situation is usual, not only for people in United Kingdom or US, but even still in Ukraine, a lot of people don't know and don't understand what Russia is, even when my country was for 300 centuries a colony of Moscow. So, at one moment I understand when everything is bad and we need to educate. When I was reading the memoirs of Winston Churchill, and even Churchill, when he was writing about USSR, he meant Russia. And when he meant Russia, he meant only Russian people. So it was the Second World War, and the USSR was not only, of course, Russian and not only Sakha, Tatar, Bashkorts, but Ukrainian, Lithuanian, Estonian people, Kazakhs people, Azerbaijani people, so on. But even for Churchill, who have, of course, quite good education and understanding of geopolitics, it was everything was Russia. The same situation we have before the collapse of USSR, which the main war crimes of our time, Putin, he tells that it's the biggest geopolitical catastrophe of 20th centuries, but it's the greatest thing in 20th centuries for whole people, free people in the world, from Berlin, which becomes a united city after it Iron Curtain fell, till Mongolia, because Mongolia de facto became independent only in 1992. Before it, when USSR was, it was like satellite. The Euro it was independent, but de facto no. So even just 3 weeks before USSR collapse, the president of United States of America, it was George Bush, not the younger one, original one, come to Kyiv. It's famous Kyiv chicken speech, and he said for Ukrainians that you don't need independence, so you don't need your self-determination, so on. So even at that time, even for people in the White House, it was not obvious about captive nation situation. But by the way, in United States from late 50s, they have their even bill about captive nation, which were voted by Congress and signed by President Eisenhower, were mentioned captive nation. There were people like Hungary, Ukrainian, Poland, Finnish, not Finnish, because Finland have their own standing.
Yeah.
It was also Ural, Eastern Turkestan, and so on. But nevertheless, even at that moment, people in State Department, White House don't know that. So we have the same situation now, because there is nothing in common between, for example, Moscow and Sakha. The distance between Moscow and the capital of Sakha Republic, which called Republic, but it's a real colony for Moscow, is near 8,000 kilometers. So it's something like from Lisbon to Luanda in Angola. Yes, so it's very, very big distance. But distance is not the main. These people have different languages, different history, different culture, different religion, and only one thing that united Moscow and Sakha is the vertical of repression. So it's only violence, and still Moscow could kill people there. They control it. And also very interesting situation, for example, in Ingushetia. Ingushetia is a part of Northern Caucasus. It's different culture, different language, different history, different geopolitical situation, because it's Caucasus, it's Turkish, it's Arabic, and so on. Not something in common with Moscow, and also nothing in common with Moscow. But it's also very important that there is nothing in common between Ingushetia and Sakha together, only that they are a colony of Moscow. So, for example, like it was when it was British Empire, and there was colony in Nigeria and in India, they have nothing common, which is other, only that it was a part of British Empire, for example. And of course, British Empire was much, much more better empire than Moscow Empire, because British Empire, of course, there is a lot of different hard story and hard moment, but it's not so bad like Moscow Empire. So it's the worst empire in the history. And very important to understand and try to make voices of captive nation, like Sakha, like Buryats, like Kalmyks, commie louder and try to make some opportunity for them to present their culture and history, because it's history of genocide. Moscow try everything like Orwell, right? They who controls the future? Someone who controls the present, and who controls the present controls the past. Yet, so we know that Moscow tried to rewrite the history of all this nation. And for example, we could take Oirat Kalmyks. Oirat Kalmyks is only one original Mongolian nation in Europe near Caspian Sea. They are Buddhist. And they are totally different by Moscow, but they still in one country. And this nation, like, for example, part of Ukrainian political nation, Crimean Tatars, where all people were deported in 1944 when it was Stalin. All are Oirat Kalmyk, all Ingush people, all Chechen people. So it was total deportation of whole nation. And unfortunately, people don't know that. And unfortunately, policymakers and stakeholders who are speaking and have connection with some people in Russia, they mostly, like you mentioned, speak with people from Moscow and St. Petersburg cities. But even if they speak with them, even if these people are pretending they are liberals or Democrats, mostly they're imperialistic, because they are looking for all this territory, and this territory is 17 million kilometers. For example, all South America is 14, so it's bigger than their all South America. They are looking from Moscow point. And when we are speaking about the future, about reconstruction, we are speaking about post-Russian spaces. So it's not one, it's several, because nothing in common will be with the spaces in Eastern Asia, like Buryatia, Sakha, Pacific Federation, Chukotka, Kamchatka, with Caucasus space, or the space of North and Eastern Europe, where Komi, Karelia, and so on. So it's different situation, different nation, different past, and different future.
And I can see why Bush Sr., the OG Bush, made his chicken speech. And it's the same reason why so many fear the breakup of the Russian Federation, as they feared then the breakup of the USSR, because they feel that it'll be a repeat of the breakup of Yugoslavia and the Yugoslav Wars of Succession, except in a larger, better armed country with a large nuclear stockpile. How do you respond to that concern?
Of course, people say that, we are afraid of strong Russia, but we also afraid of weak Russia. And I ask them the second question, why? Just try to remember the time when Moscow was weak. It was in early 19th, and it was in 1917s, 1912s. It was the best time for whole world. Of course, when we speak about the dissolution of this, the biggest, not in the culture way, but in the size way, empire, we should thinking on a way of risk management. So, of course, there is some risk, and we should be prepared for them. Try to not repeat the mistakes which were with part of Yugoslavia, with Bosnia, and with Srebrenica. Of course, we know it with Kosovo. And some mistakes which were when USSR collapsed, and the former Metropolia was the greatest friend, and they started war in Moldova, and they support war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and then they started war against Ichkeria and so on. So it's very important why we are doing this work in Free Nation Post-Russia Forum, to build different scenarios, roadmap, how to make this risk less. It's also about the nukes, for example. But also, if we come back to the lesson of USSR, now we have 15 different countries. And only problem for whole world is former Metropolia, Russia. So, of course, we have great example of open society and democratic country like Estonia or Lithuania. We have some country who are fighting, like Moldova, Ukraine, Sakartvelo, Georgia. And sometimes we are winning, sometimes we are losing, but we are fighting for freedom. And we have some bad examples of dictatorship, but like dictatorship like Kazakhstan or Azerbaijan, which is not democratic country, but not such bad like in Moscow. And we also have the examples of terrible totalitarian state like Turkmenistan. But nevertheless, even if we have Turkmenistan, which are awful dictatorship, but the problem of Turkmenistan is just a problem of people in Turkmenistan. So it didn't threat for whole world, for Turkey, Kazakhstan, Great Britain, Ukraine, or other countries. So even in that way, it's better to have 15 more country and one Moscow than have one united USSR, which will have for 100 million peoples more, try to be much more free. And when we're speaking about the nukes, we could have the example how Ukraine and Kazakhstan say, you don't need nuke. We are normal country, so we'll provide. And the biggest mistakes in 1991, 1994 was that these nukes should also were taken from Moscow. If now Russia Federation doesn't have a nukes, it would be much, much more better. So we, in this way, when we are preparing these roadmaps, one of the main moments is full denuclearization. And leaders of all captive nation and regions, they already signed the agreement that they are ready to provide all nukes which the nation or region have, like a part of their recognition. So I think it's a very important issue. The second moment, it's also how to prevent different conflicts, which could be, or some war, so don't have this war. Because also, when we are mentioning about the cases of Yugoslavia, it also not only bad reference, because of course there is a tragedy in Bosnia, in Kosovo, this genocide in Srebrenica, but there was a case of non-violent secession like Slovenia. Of course, Yugoslavia or Serbia revanchism tried to have war against Slovenia, but it was finished just in 2 or 3 weeks, and there weren't very big blood. And Slovenia now is one of the greatest country in the region. It's quite successful, open, and liberal. And the same situation, for example, was with Northern Macedonia. There weren't any war in Northern Macedonia, so they become independent without these problems which were in Bosnia. So if we will prepare for it, all risks that will arise when Russia will break up will be much, 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 much less than the risk when we have one united terroristic state with nukes. So if you will think in that way, that democratization of this area, decolonization, denuclearization is the win-win scenario, both for captive nation and region and for whole free world. It will be much more easy not to repeat this Kyiv chicken speech, or now I call them post-Russia chicken speech, when some politicals in the United States or some European country like Germany are afraid of weak Russia. No, weak Russia, it will be very good, but we should be prepared for some risks.
What's the plan going ahead for the Free Nations Opposed Russia Forum? What do you see the organization becoming in the next 5-10 years?
Unfortunately, like we were starting with, time is very important, and we don't have this 5 or 10 years, because if we won't be successful in the next 2-3 years, it means that not only Ukraine but whole free world will be in a big war. So I think that Putin, Xi Jinping, and their allies from Iran, North Korea will try to start big war in next few years when President of United States is Donald Trump. So they feel like some windows of opportunity for their aggression. And I think that we should try to speed up this process, and we should as I already say, not waiting for second Pearl Harbor or something like that. And we should be not only thinking how to defeat ourselves, but thinking about asymmetric and offensive actions. And stop there, because why I'm speaking about that? My country, I'm Ukrainian. We don't have opportunity now to choose where fighting with Moscovia Empire. We should fight in our lands, in our city, which are destroyed, which they occupied it and killed thousands of people. But people in Norway, Finland, Poland, Czech Republic, Germany, Denmark, and so on, they still have opportunity to choose way of fighting with Russia. Unfortunately, Putin already in war with the free world, with the West, and so on. In his mind, he is preparing for kinetic war, not only diversion or hybrid attacks, but European country, United States have opportunity to create not new front line on their lands, but create a new frontier. Of new independent state which won't make this kinetic war. So if on the border of Finland will be independent Karelia, on the border with Lithuania and Poland won't be the Kaliningradskaya Oblast, Kaliningrad regions where now Iskander and Dukes are located, but where normal, compact, liberal Baltic states with name Amberland and the capital Kronisberg Karolia, it won't be a threat both for these people who live there and for their neighbors. So my point, we should try to use this strategy of decolonization in Russia like a tool to prevent and to not give them opportunity for dictators to make this war, which now in Ukraine, the Third World War or First Global War or First Nukes War or something like that. And we still have a time, but it's not a lot of time, and it's not 5 or 10 years, unfortunately. I pray to be wrong, but I think that we have just a few years maximum.
You mentioned offensive actions. What kind of things did you envisage? Things like cultural propaganda or hybrid conflict?
Yeah, we don't need propaganda because we are speaking about the truth, but we need the strategic communication. For example, it's very important. People who live in Karelia is a neighbor of Finland, so it's very close, ethnical, language, and so on. And they also have their independence since 100 years ago. But they lose Bolsheviki, the Red Army come and reoccupied Karelia. And now you could just look what's the difference when you have the independent state and when you are still a colony of Moscow. Just make this we as Finland, Karelia, the level of life, level of medicine, level of social opportunity, and so on. So it's very important to speak with people, try to at least create something like it was when we have Cold War and it was Radio Free Europe and so on, when people from free world country try to speak and support the people who wanted to live free in USSR and other countries. So also my nation was a part of this evil empire, and my parents, grandparents were studying and working on Brezhnev time and on Khrushchev time and so on. So they were a part of this empire. And for example, the age of my father was, he was young and it was just something good which happens that he didn't go to Afghanistan because this empire want to use him in the war of Afghanistan. For example, my grandfather was in the age where he was waiting to go on the USSR troops to kill people in Hungary. Not because my grandfather was a bad person, but because we were a part of this empire, and they use us like now they use Sakha, Buryats, Tatar people, and so on. But people who live in Ukraine or under the Iron Curtain in different countries, they know what was the better world, and they know for what fighting. So our point in Free Nation Post-Russia Forum is try to make more bridges. So when, for example, people from Sakha, Buryatia will know if they will fight for independence, that free world will recognize them, and they could become a normal democratic country, not a gray zone for Beijing, for example, but they will have support from Japan, United States, Canada. It could change a lot of things. Because, for example, people in Ichkeria now, in Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, they have a very sad experience. When they was fighting against Moscovian imperialists in 1994, it was the time of Bosnia War, of Srebrenica. No one supported them. Unfortunately, even my country and other countries which were a part of USSR and become independent just a few years ago, we weren't support the Ichkeria. Of course, some Ukrainian was fighting with Ichkerian people against Moscow, but as a state, we don't support them, because we also believe in this propaganda that all people there are terroristical, some fundamentalists, Wahhabis, and so on, which wasn't true, because people who create this Chechen Republic Ichkeria state, it became independent from USSR. It never was a part of Russian Federation. They never signed any agreement with Russian Federation, and they create a secular state. It wasn't Islamic state. So they create normal liberal state, and then Moscow tried to involve there some Wahhabis from different Islamic groups, because also Western people don't support them. So I think that we should now make it clear that if people will fighting for freedom against dictatorship, and thank you one more time for the great channel and podcast, that free world will support them, and not a kind of new Tsar or imperator. It's very important issue, because now we could hurt a lot of good Russian or such so-called Russian liberal opposition. It's very, very important to understand. Like Voltaire said about the Holy Roman Empire of Germany nation, it wasn't holy, it wasn't Roman, and it was empire. So the Russian liberal opposition isn't Russian. They represent only Moscow or Moscow-centristic views. So they don't represent, for example, Siberia, Ural, or Vladivostok. They aren't liberal. They imperialistic. They just wanted to change their bad side, like Putin, for new, young, more modern, but also Tsar who will be dictator. And the sadness is they aren't real opposition. They are created and controlled by Russian special service. Mostly, of course, there is some people who are not, but mostly all these organizations are a part of Russian narrative. They also have bad policemen like Putin, Shoigu, Patrushev, Solovyov, and they have a part of good policemen who are trying to pretend that they are liberal, democratic, and so on, to have this visual thinking in West about a new one, перезагрузка, разрядка, so reset, reborn, something like that, like it was in Khrushchev time, then Gorbachev time, and Yeltsin, and so on. But it's a part of this imperialistic state, and we should understand it. So only solution is the solution. We have speaking this, that big Russia is big problem, small Russia, small problem, no Russia. Of course, we'll have some problem, but we for sure could grab one beer or even two, because it will be much more or less risk for whole world, both for people who live in this territory and for all neighbors.
And thank you for what you're doing. And I want to ask about your journey from being a finance guy, being involved in investment, to leading the forum, or at least being very significantly involved in the forum. What drew you into political activism, and when did that occur?
I'm a citizen, and I understand that freedom is not free. And if you wanted to be free, I wanted to be free for myself and for other self. So I understand that it can't be normal if someone enslaved. And when we started fighting, it was our internal fighting against the dictatorship in Ukraine. It was Yanukovych, and we win it. It was very hard because it was a criminal. It was Russia, like Lukashenko proxy. Of course, he has some part of independent, but it was the narrative of Moscow. And they started a big war. Before this war, I wasn't interested in Russia. You know, in Ukraine history, we have a time in 20s when one our famous writer, Khvelyovys, say, just run from Moscow, so that we should looking for Europe, for United States and our culture, connections, so on. And it was also my credo. I don't try to look for the East because I was feel something not good from them. I understand that, you know, something in mind was that they killed a lot of my relatives and so on in the history. But then in 2014 they comes on tanks, on aircraft, starting to destroy everything I love and everything I have. And of course, like a person who wanted to develop different business and some companies or NGO, understand that we don't have other choice just to fight for our freedom, because everything else couldn't be without that. So I joined this struggle, and when the full-scale invasion started, I was a person who liked history and geography and geopolitics. For me, it was clear that we don't have other choice, only decolonization. It's like in a good old movie, which name is Highlander, that in the final should be only one. So when I say there will be only one, I mean not Russia or Ukraine, I mean Europe or Euro-Atlantic Union and dictatorship. They will destroy our world and rule-based order, or we will stop them. And now the front line in Ukraine, but it's not on the territory only of Ukraine, it's on the mind of people. So like the name of your channel, it's about dictator and Democrats. So it's very important. It's not about territory. And for me, it was no choice, because like people who wanted to live in free life, in normal country, I should fight, because if we won't fight, we will be enslaved. So my country, my nation have this experience 100 years ago when we lose the war and we think, okay, we'll be occupied. But then just few years later, we have the genocide, which called the Holodomor, when millions of people were killed. And people who want to fight, they were deported to Siberia. So we know now that when we fight, don't want to fight, we don't have other choice. And we will fight till then, because if we won't fight, they will just come and kill us without struggle. So it's even better to, if we will lose or will be killed, let's it be in fight, not just waiting when they will come and shut all your family.
So as I understand it, you were involved quite significantly in the Maidan protests and the revolution of dignity. What was it like there?
Yep, I was, before I was founder of Free Nation Post-Russia Forums, 9 years before we have the revolution of dignity, I was younger. And I understand that these criminals like Yanukovych and his Russian guys, they also won't stop. And they're ready to kill us, what they did, in January and February of 2014, and the only way to stop them is to fight. So if we have opportunity to non-violence demonstration and activity, we should use them. But if there is no way, only violence, then it means that we should use violence, because they also will just kill people. So me, my friends, my family, we were involved, and we were on this very black days in the end of February 2014 in Maidan, and take a part in this final fights. So yeah, unfortunately, freedom is not free. So on if you want to stop evil, you should fight, because they will use everything, law, policemen, they will provide you to the jails, they will try to rape you, to kick you and so on, because they are not normal people. They don't believe in law, they don't believe in some rules, so it's really bad people. So if you want to stop them, you should be ready to fight.
There's a narrative being very strongly pushed, especially in the established democracies and in the West, that the revolution of dignity was somehow pushed or funded or created artificially by the CIA and MI6. And it comes straight from the Kremlin, but it gets echoed by journalists here and people start to believe it. What would you say to the people who are believing it?
Unfortunately, these people for sure haven't been in the Maidan, because if they were there and feel and see, they don't have such bullshit in their mind. So unfortunately, CIA or Mi-5 or Mi-6 doesn't work like they should work, and they doesn't support the freedom. Unfortunately, now we should make CIA great again. I think that there is a lot of problem with them. So it's very huge what you ask, but it's also a little bit funny. For example, I will try to make this metaphor. I don't know if it's good or not, but if you have some good time with woman you like or love, and you don't need this asking have she orgasm or no, because you feel it, that it was true and it was real. So it was the same situation. People, it was 1 million people. There was a day in Kiev when on the street were 1,060,000 people. So it was so... I haven't seen such people, a lot of people in my life. In all main streets, there were people who were ready to fight for their freedom. And these people, of course, no one gives them money or push them. They give everything. So me also, I know, because I was the person who buy things that, pyrotechnic things that help to burn in first Berkut, so this special military, not military, but how it calls, violence of regime cars. So I know it, because all people who are there, they provide their money and resources to finance it, because it was like the biggest cloud sourcing in the world. So because it's our land, you can't simulate it. Because people were there on the streets in the winter. Yeah, we live in Ukraine. It's not the Portugal or Spain where you could be in the winter. It's okay.
Cold, yeah.
Yeah, so it's really cold. And we were on the night and we were fighting. So it's... If people have in their life something real, something special, they could understand it. But if people live in this conspiracy theory, when they think that people can't do nothing, that everything is controlled by some globalist or deep state or something like that, it's a problem with these people. They can't just understand that we are the people, we are the nation, we create our state. So if why is the revolution of dignity started? One of the names is Euromaidan. Yeah, it's about the European integration, but it was only one part of. But the main wake-up call, it was when this Berkut, this part of Yanukovych special forces, there make real violence against just people who nothing do bad. It was young people, not young people. They kick them very, very heavy. So after that, millions of people stand up and say, you can't do this. So it's real in Ukraine, and it could be real in different countries. For example, we could see it how it was just a few weeks ago in Nepal. Of course, there also could be some actors who tried to play it, but it was the voice of people. It wasn't created in some special service. You can't simulate it. It always go out, from the people outside of them. The same situation was, for example, in Romania when they finished with this Ceausescu regime, or it was the same with all the dictatorship, because it's false, because it's unnatural for people when some crazy dictatorship try to kill and to control everything.
Yeah, I asked a young Ukrainian friend of mine the same question when we were in Kyiv, and the words she said have stuck with me, is that you can't pay for the look of hope in people's eyes.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm pretty sure that MI6's budget would not pay for 1 million people to go out and protest. I don't think it's that big.
for more than 100 days on the minus 10 also degrees.
Yeah. I don't think Britain has the scratch for that. But I want your background in finance. How have you leveraged that to help your political activism?
It's not only a finance, and it's mostly the management. So I work in strategic development. I create and to help to grow different both commercial, non-commercial activities, enterprises, business, and so on. So when you work on this area, you are working with two main options. You're working with people. So it's very important to understand how people are thinking, how they are motivated, how you could have collaboration with them. And the second point, you're working with the project. So it's project management. You understand how to make something from the idea till the results. So it's also very useful now in nowadays when we are developing the Free Nation Post-Russia Forum and help captive nation and their movements to become more subjectively and more effectively. So this background of my professional life and work is really very useful, because I working with people and I working with ideas. So now I do the same, but in a little bit different area. But the main process, the psychology and the communication and the management is very similar.
And from your perspective, I think I have a hint of the answer, but Western governments and investors, what should they better understand about Ukraine's struggle that they're failing to at the moment?
They should understand that it's not Ukrainian struggle, it's our common struggle. And if Ukraine will fall, it's not about Ukraine. Of course, it's about Ukraine, but it's not only about Ukraine. It means that Russia won't stop. Moreover, they will use Ukrainian people like a part of their army, like they do it previous when, for example, they attacked Czechoslovakia in 1968, or when they attacked the Poland in 1921, or when they attack Lithuania, Estonia, Finland. My city where I was born in, it called Zhytomyr. In English, it will be Rye Peace or something like that. If you translate, it's between Kyiv and Lviv, so it's a central part of Ukraine. And from my city, which is located far away from Finland, in 1939, a lot of men, and there was the Zhytomyrskaya Divizia, or something like that it calls, was going to Finland to kill people in Finland with no reason, because Ukraine was occupied. So, like we have same situation now. Now Russia used people from Crimea, occupied it, or Donetsk, Lugansk to fight against Ukraine. So then they will use the millions of Ukraine to fight against Finland, Poland, Czech Republic, Germany, Norway, and so on. So we should understand that Moscow should be stopped. Moscow should be defeated, and Moscow should be decolonized. If we won't do that, they will come back. So all these ceasefires, all these breakups, they will use just for preparing for next war. So only decolonization of Moscovia is a way how we could make long-term peace and stability in Ukraine. And now it's a good, really, option and price for West. Support Ukraine, provide some hybrid offensive action, and not have a big war with Russia or People's Republic of China or Iran. But if we will be very relaxed and easy and wishful thinking, and what we have now, just few weeks ago, drones attack every day now, for in Europe continent. This MiG in Estonia, this drone attack in Poland, this Russia trying to kill the CEO of Rheinmetall company, the biggest military company. And what we are doing? We say, oh, it's mistakes. Oh, let's wait. Oh, it's not the escalation. Oh, let's not escalate. So Putin laughing. He's literally laughing. Yesterday was his one more interview in Valdai, and the interviewer asked about these drones in Denmark, and he's ha ha ha, I won't do this more, ha ha ha. So he's laughing on our face and preparing for the big war. So my point is we should be very realistic. We should be very clear that Moscow is preparing for big war. And only one way to stop them, they won't be stopped, is to be united and to be strong. And it means that we should destroy the archer, not the arrows. It's a very important issue. And we should recognize that don't want we it or don't want we it, already Moscow in war against West. So we can't prevent this, but we could choose, not Ukraine, but the West could choose the area where it could be battlefield. And I believe that it's better to have frontier of new independent post-Russian spaces that have a front line in Estonia, Finland, Czech Republic, Poland, Latvia, and so on.
Well, they're already building the trenches out in Estonia.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for any of my audience who want to learn more about decolonization of Russia and perhaps learn more about the cultures of the captive nations?
Yep, we're happy generation because we have the internet and Google. So if you want to know something, we have this great option. But please be very clear and not try to read these Moscow resources and Moscow propaganda. So try to separate it and try to find different sources and different resources. Not only the first one you see on the Russia Today or Sputnik or something like that. Please try to read some more. And of course now it's much more easy because it's also working like different tools of translation. Yeah, you could also find, for example, some texts in Sakha language or Bashkorts or Poland or Ukrainian, and could use different tools for translate and read it. And don't believe what is written in Wikipedia by Russia language. It's mostly controlled by FSB, and they make, for example, we know about our platform. We have also the page in Wikipedia, and in some language it's okay, but they in Russian language and in English language, FSB make these changes. If it's try to write some truth, they change it for what they are doing. Right. So they edit it day by day.
I just have this image in my head of some FSB private whose job it is to go and edit Wikipedia pages.
Yeah, and it's 100 people. It's 100 or even 1,000 people.
And it blows my mind the amount of money that Russia throws at their propaganda and how little the democracies dedicate to combating it. Finally, to close out, I want to dig into your values a little bit. And firstly, what are the concepts of democracy and freedom mean to you? What's the value of those words? And if any, what images do they conjure in your mind when I say them?
I believe in individualism, individuality. So I believe in humanity, humanism, and I believe in things which were right by Immanuel Kant, which were by Montesquieu, by Karl Popper, by Hayek, by Mises, and others. So I think that it's very important to understand that all people, probably the best Kant, Immanuel Kant say about that none of people could be a tool. All people are the target of them all. Yeah, people can't be a tool. So I think that Machiavelli and Machiavellism is bullshit. And I think that people who are try to be cynic and believe that you could use people and you could control people, they are very unhappy people because they don't know what is love. Real love is it. Because if you love yourself, you love other people, or people loves you you won't be a bad person. And if you have open minds and you try to have the empathy, try to understand other people, you will try to build open liberal society, community, states, companies, and so on in different levels. So for me, when we speak about democracy and about liberty, I'm, for example, in political elections, politicals favorites, meaning I'm a right liberal person, so I believe in classical liberalism. Of course, also with some sustainable development, so also green line, but mostly orange-green. And I think that it's also important to understand that your free is over when somebody free others start. So you should understand that people are different. And if you are good with something, it doesn't mean that someone else should be good with that. But no one could make some dictatorship between what you should do. So, and the second point, I think that is very important. And unfortunately now in the most successful country in the world, we have problem with that freedom is not free. So if our fathers, grandmothers, and so on, they are built liberal state, it doesn't mean that it will be for forever. So because there is also some dictatorship, some not very smart or good guys who try also to destroy it, and we should be ready to fight even if we live in such country like United States. Because, it could be a big problem for this country, unfortunately. And we know that Hitler was in Germany, so it was very culture, very well-developed and educated country. But then Nazi come. So it could happen even in good countries, in open society. So we should be always prepared for defense the democrats and liberal societies.
And some people in the established democracies, as you've just touched on, appear to be losing faith with it, especially among younger people. There was YouGov polling earlier this year that showed belief in democracy in France and Spain to be about 50%, Poland 48%. What advice do you have for those people, those young people? And what would you have to say to perhaps the slightly older ones?
I try not to be very old guy because I'm 36, so I hope I'm also a little bit young. But for these people, for generation Z or Alpha or how they call now, people who are 15 or 20 years or 25, I have only one advice. Please clear your smartphones, delete TikTok, and buy few more books. Because all answer they are in previous time in history. It's nothing new from Roman time. Nothing new we have. So you could read about this in fiction or non-fiction book and have this answer. Because if you're looking just in TikTok, okay, so it's normal to look video in TikTok or Instagram and so on, but it's only clips and a lot of propaganda. And if you want to have this context mindset, you should read books and not some books about success, about real. I think it's very important to read fiction book. If you read Kundera or Remarque or Vonnegut or Camus or Kafka or other author, you will have much more option of view understanding what humanity is and what people is. So read books. It's my main advice for all generation, not only for young people, but for all the both.
Thank you very much for joining me. It's been your insight's been fascinating. I've learned quite a lot actually today. My final question and another message I am going to ask you to send. Do you have a message for the dictators of the world?
I don't know if will be opportunity to speak with someone of them, but I hope in Hague we will see Putin, Assad, Yanukovych, Lukashenko, and I will buy tickets for Netherlands to come there and to look on their eyes. But nevertheless, I think one moment for them all, they also should read books or at least newspaper, old one, and just look the story how it was finished with Gaddafi, Ceausescu, Saddam Hussein, Hitler, and other not very good guys. So all of them were thinking that it's forever and they will live forever and they will be dictators forever. But then something could change. You could be dictators like Ceausescu for more than 30 years, but then you will be killed people who hate you. Yeah, the same situation with Gaddafi and others. So they don't have other choice. And only what they could do, it's better for them and for whole world, it's to say, okay, guys, I quit. So let's speak about how big screen I will have in my camera in jail in Haga. Okay, let's make a deal. It's a big deal. We could provide you one more ice cream or one more dinner if you will quit now. So you will lose. It's for sure. But unfortunately, the main question is when they will lose, because every day they kill people. So let's try to make it quickly. And the main narratives how to stop all main dictatorship now is make Moscow small again. If you make Moscow small again, it will be much more easier with dictatorship in Sahel region, in PRC, in Iran, in other regions. So because it's the main source of mostly whole evil in the world, not in Moscow. So let's finish with them, and it will be much more easier with all other dictators.
Mr. Magaletsky, thank you very much indeed. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you. That's it for this episode of Why We Fight. What struck you most about their story? What did you agree or disagree with? Drop a comment and let us know. And if this conversation meant something to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who cares about democracy as much as you do. To get early access and support independent journalism, join us on Patreon or Substack. Links are in the description. And if you want to connect with a global community of people who care about freedom and human rights, come hang out with us on Discord. Until next time, remember, democracy is non-negotiable.